everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today on Project Next. I get the special honor of welcoming not just a guest, but a lifelong friend, Scott Johanningsmeier. We go all the way back to Floyd Central High School, class of 1999. We were in band and marching band together. Scott's gone on to co-author a remarkable new book, Jesus Was. He's also been a pastor for 10 years. And this book isn't just about history or theology. It's a heartfelt call for peace, unity, and honest reflection. It asks us to look at who Jesus really was and how too often his image and message have been distorted to serve propaganda or division. I'm really excited to sit down with Scott today, not only because he's a wonderful human being and an old friend, but because his work shines a light on questions that matter deeply in our world right now. So let's dive into Jesus Was and talk about what it means for us today. Scott, thank you so much for being here. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me here. It's we as you said, we've been friends and we'll ran into each other at different stuff at Lanesville Heritage, different band. It's like it's your friend that you've known forever, and you just pick up right where you left off. And so it's great sitting here talking with you.
When you messaged me and told me about the book and asked if you could get on, I was just so excited. I mean, you're a really good human being. I've known you since high school. And my husband, he was a senior and played saxophone with you when you were a freshman. And we were both just reflecting on this. You're a really good human being.
Thank you.
And I mean, you bring a lot of wonderful love, unity, community to the area where we live. And it's just what a joy that we get to like collab on this thing to celebrate. And your book comes out tomorrow.
Tomorrow is the release day. It is. You can go on right now and pre-order it. All the places where you buy books, Amazon, Barnes Noble, all those places. And people who pre-ordered months ago, that's starting to show up. Some got them today, but it's officially out. Release date is tomorrow, and it's been a long journey. So I'm excited about it.
Yes. Yes. So yeah, you can get it. Shared a post. It said there was only 17 left on Amazon and it comes out tomorrow. So if you're watching this and you want to get it on Amazon, get it quick. It's not very expensive and we really need this message. So let's talk first. Why did you want to write this book? When did it happen? Like you said, it's been a few years in the making. Yeah, why did you want to write a book about Jesus?
Yeah, and this really started with my co-editor, Susie Flory. Susie is a New York Times best-selling author. She writes memoir books. In fact, I just mentioned to Sarah that if you saw the movie over the summer, The Unbreakable Boy, about a family that has a son that has brittle bone syndrome and is autistic, that was her book. She helped that family write the book. And so that's her heart, is telling people stories. And so her and I were in seminary together.
Oh, neat.
We were in the same cohort. So we started together, graduated together, had all the same classes together. And so the inspiration from this book all took place at that time. Of course, we started seminary in 2018, which means we were in seminary during 2020 and 2021. And so if we, I know nobody wants to jump back to that time period, but if we just reflect on what all was going on, we had the COVID pandemic, we had the lockdown. And then during that time, we had all the racial tension that was stirring up across the country, as well as all the Me Too movement. All this stuff was going on all at once, along with a very contentious presidential election that culminated, with a tight, close election, but one that ended up ultimately resulting in what we saw happen on January 6th of 2021. And after that day, after a couple days after that, my co-editor, Susie, who's a writer, she writes for a living, she was seeing all the attacks and negative and the back and forth that was happening on social media, especially on Facebook, saw that.
Yes.
And she wanted to speak into this, but she didn't know how, because she's not one to go and put herself out there a lot or try and get out, but she wanted to say something. So she made a simple Facebook post that had 3 words in it. Jesus was nonviolent.
Oh.
I remember seeing that. And it was like, first I was like, Susie, you're crazy for putting a post on Facebook right now because, I mean, think about it. You put something on Facebook, you expect reactions, and they're normally a lot of angry and just back and forth and people jumping on each other. And there were a lot of comments on that post. And I looked, and the interesting thing was they were all positive. People were curious. Well, what do you mean? Explain this a little more. Talk about this. Where people would say, well, what about the whip that Jesus made? Or what about, and it started a dialogue because people in that moment were curious about Jesus, what he said and what he did. And that inspired Susie. The next day, she made another Jesus was post. The next day, another one. And she, after all these comments on all of these posts kept coming in and people were curious and excited, she committed to doing 30 days of Jesus was comments. And so about that time, I had finished my New Year's transition from last year to New Year sermons. And I was trying to think of what could I do that would lead me up to Easter. And so I messaged Susie. I'm like, hey, I want to take these Jesus was statements that you're doing. Mm-hmm. I'm going to make this a sermon series. Is that okay? And she's like, absolutely, do this. Let me know how your church reacts to it, what they think and everything. And so we started this conversation back and forth amongst ourselves. And I would send her some ideas that she hadn't thought of yet. And of course, that would be the next day's Jesus was statement. And we just went back and forth doing this. And the whole time we saw this great interest in, well, what was it that Jesus did when he was on earth?
Right.
Because the question is, when you hear this, why Jesus was, which was actually the number one question. It occurred on every post she made. Jesus is, why Jesus was. Because as people of faith, we always say Jesus is because we believe Jesus is alive today just as he was then.
Right.
The statement Jesus was makes us reflect
on
who he was in the Gospels, on earth, walking with the disciples, interacting with people, the ultimate example. Because when we read in Paul's letters, he says, follow God's example. Follow the example of Jesus. Well, this is the example that we have. These are the accounts we have, the things that made impressions on the people who were watching him. And so we started doing this. And of course, Susie's a professional writer. And people were always saying, hey, Susie, please make this a book. Aww. This has been great seeing these posts. Can you make this a book? So Susie reached out to me then about a month or so after she wrapped up her 30 days. And as I was wrapping up my sermon series, and she's like, do you want to do this together? And I was like, absolutely. That's exciting. And so we sat and we talked about it for a while, but we realized that if we want to truly know who Jesus was, it can't just be our own two voices.
Right.
Because then it would be Jesus was according to Scott and according to Susie.
Right.
So we reached out to a bunch of our other seminary classmates and said, hey, we're doing this. We're going to write something. We don't know what will come of it, but we're going to write this book. The theme is Jesus was, as you've been seeing with Susie's posts. Will you write a chapter? And so we have 19, including Susie and myself, 19 authors for a total of 31 different Jesus was chapters.
Aww.
And it's just been a wonderful experience. And for me, I never wrote a book. My background's in music, obviously.
Yes.
We were talking about, I have my undergrad's in music, but I'm also in ministry. I've never written a book. And so for Susie to say, let's do this together, that's a big deal for me. And it's something that, as we've been going through this, she's like, Scott, you're really good at this, which makes me feel good about this. And it goes through and everything. But it's been a journey because it's been over 4 years, basically 4.5 years from the time we started this till it's coming out tomorrow.
And if we reflect on that time period, the pandemic, the January 6th, we were so divided. We were thinking our neighbors were our enemies. If you voted differently from me, we should block you on Facebook and never talk again. And it definitely seeing history repeat itself definitely see that happening again now. So it seems like this is a really wonderful time for your book to come out. And I also really like the community aspect. It's not just your take on who Jesus was or Susie's take. It's your friends in this community. And everybody's going to have different wisdom and different stories to share, which is a big thing we're missing. I feel like a big reason we have the fear, hate, and division and everything going on is we are lacking community.
Yeah.
And we're told constantly on all our social media feeds, on the news, division sells, fear sells, and it's getting to us and we're believing it. And I think a lot of us fear our neighbors, and it
Mhm.
is stopping us from going to the local event, going to the community thing, talking to people. What do you see out there on your side where you're at with that, with the division and how much community is the answer?
Yeah, and I think that community aspect's a real big deal because we all the authors were at the same seminary, but we come from a vast difference of backgrounds. We actually have more women authors than we do men in a theology book. We have
That's nice.
we have Canadians. We have one guy from Australia
Oh,
who
neat.
wrote a chapter on this, and it's a really powerful chapter. And so we have people from the Midwest. We've got Susie lives in California. I live in Southern Indiana. I'm a small church pastor. She's a professional writer outside of San Francisco. We've got people from all over. We've got white and black authors. We got just all these different backgrounds and even different denominations. At our seminary, it was technically a Baptist seminary. I was the only Baptist in our cohort. We've got a wide range of denominations represented. So this adds this community element of more than just it's my way, but let's look at to use a church term, the ecumenical Jesus, the Jesus of all the people, of all the different denominations, the walks, the faith traditions. But let's step beyond just the faith traditions and let's look at who Jesus was. Because as you mentioned, there's so much tension. And we saw that when I was asking Susie about, as we were going through this, hey, just reflect on this, that first thing that you posted and all those comments. She said it was surprising because the people that commented and were asking questions were from all walks of life. And she goes, they were people I know. So I know their history, I know their backgrounds, I know their stories. There were people of faith who were asking. There were people who walked away from faith who were asking questions. There were people who have never had faith. There were people who were Republicans. There were people who were Democrats. There were people, that want nothing to do with politics. There were people from all walks of life. But the uniting thing was Jesus. Because as you said earlier, it feels like history is repeating itself right now from even just the time when we first wrote the book to now when it's coming out. But that's a bigger theme through this all, because what we're experiencing with these tensions has happened throughout history. Even at the time when Jesus walked on the earth, we have this tension because we look at the famous story when Jesus asked the Samaritan woman, "Can you give me a drink of water?" And her response was, "Why are you talking to me? I'm a Samaritan. You're a Jew." And he broke these social and norms, cultural norms to reach people
Right.
and to start conversations and interactions. And that's what we need to do more of.
It seems so wild where we are right now in 2025, because you think we would have learned by now people are people. You think we would have read the Sneetches book by Dr. Seuss and understood that message. But we are doing it now. We are not talking to people if we think they voted differently than us. If they make a Facebook post that hurts our feelings, we stop the dialogue. We stop the community. We stop trusting in the community, which studies show is very damaging to where you live. If you don't have a trust in that system starts to crack. So I am constantly stunned, and I got myself in it. Scott, during the pandemic, I went way too far to the left. I blocked people. I stopped talking to people. I really got into cops are bad. And now I'm really good friends with cops. And so I got myself out, thankfully. But I have a lot of compassion for people that are stuck. And it's not our fault. Like, we've got to recognize that
Mhm.
this propaganda machine, this division is so powerful. Um, I started Project Next because of it.
Mhm.
However, the last few weeks, I've really seen it's much worse than I thought. Are you seeing that too?
Yeah.
Like, what people's algorithms are feeding them, the stories they get. They think everybody else is getting them, but they're not. It's tailored to you and getting you to stay on that social media site or that news or whatever. It's to get your attention. They make money off of that. What wisdom do you have as a pastor with this book? Can you offer people, if you read this book, it's going to help, right? It's going to help understand we're not so divided.
Yeah, and what it will do is hopefully, and the thing that Susie and I talked about as we started this book and as we were writing it and conveying to the authors what we want discussions to start from this book.
That's
This
such a
is
great
not a
thing.
book that necessarily will give you you'll read it and you'll walk away saying, I know everything about Jesus. There are going to be times and chapters in this that you will read and you'll be like, I'm uncomfortable with that. And
That's
that
good.
as
Yeah.
an editor, that was one thing that I challenged myself, that I don't want to put out a book that I am 100%. I do it. I read through it right off the bat. This is the Jesus I know. I wanted to be challenged. And I had some very, very challenging moments as I was reading. It's not that I disagree with them, because I will say I do agree with everything in this book, but it made me take aside my assumptions and
Right.
my tradition and the history that I come from and look at things from a different perspective. I'm going to jump on talk about two of the chapters that really hit that for me personally, and I know for everybody that's read it, that's talked with me, they're like, these chapters really hit hard. And one of them was by the guy from Australia, Peter Green. He wrote a chapter called Jesus Was a Friend to Sinners and Outcasts. And in it, he challenges us, because so often when we think about Jesus and how Jesus treated people, we want to know how people responded to Jesus. He challenges us to think about how Jesus responded to people, and
Yeah,
that
I like that.
Jesus offered friendship whether people responded to his message or not. And that's really hard for church people. That's really hard for me. And it's one of those where I had to step back and be like, let me read this. Let me reread this and think about this, because it is true. And we see this all the time. And one of the things that he mentioned in there that I, even reading through the Gospel of Matthew, I never caught, but that when Jesus goes to Matthew's house, when he calls him to be a disciple, Matthew's a tax collector. The text says that there were many tax collectors there. Tax collectors were considered the biggest of sinners at the time.
Right.
They were robbing, they were cheating people. You think about the story of Zacchaeus, how he cheated and robbed people and but if there were many tax collectors there, why were they hanging out with Jesus if they were the sinners of the day? Because he treated them like people,
Hmm.
and he responded. We see how Matthew was changed. We see how Zacchaeus was changed. If all of them were changed, that would have been a big deal, and everybody would have written about that. So that tells us that not all of them were, but
Right.
Jesus didn't withhold his friendship.
Right.
Another one is Leo Diaz. Leo is a first generation Cuban American living in Florida, and he reflects. And each of our the chapters have a good story element. Susie, being a memoir author,
Hmm.
wanted us to write stories to reflect on why we're approaching this subject before we dive in.
Hmm.
Leo reflected on his community, the Cuban American community's reaction to the death of Fidel Castro
Huh.
and their celebrations. And then Leo wrote a chapter, Jesus Was Loving to His Enemies. I mean, that's powerful, as he reflected on the way his community responded to that moment,
Yeah.
responded to Castro and all the hurt they felt from that, to then say, Jesus was loving to his enemies, and here's how he was. And I say all those because it's easy for us to fall into these echo chambers where we want to hear the stuff. I have people at my work, you have people, we have people who they listen to what pops up on their social media in the Facebook algorithm. The algorithms hit us hard.
Yes. Yes.
I always laugh because our home Amazon account, me, my wife, my two daughters, we have one Amazon account. So we're always looking, it has no idea what to think of us because we all are on there looking at different stuff. And I laugh at times the stuff that's paired. But when we're doing our personal things, it just feeds into that. What is
And you
it?
think your opinions get validated because it's only people that like what you say or people that don't like and they go after you and they make you even further divided. And so you're just reinforced in that divisive belief. And then you think anybody that doesn't think that something's wrong with them and you shouldn't talk to them. It's such a trap.
It is. And you get that. And the gut reaction then is when you hear it over and over and over and over again, is that when you read something that is different or something that could be challenging to the situation that you're in, our gut reaction is say, well, I don't believe that. I don't accept that, and push it away and shut it. And that's something that I said as an author, there were several of these that I had to step back and say, well, let me look at this because let's face, I'm a middle class white male, mid 40s, I haven't had a lot of hardship or had something where I've had an enemy that we've actually really, really hated. So hearing Leo talk about people only being able to say that man in referring to Castro and then writing about Jesus, that's something that's like, whoa.
Yeah.
Or, even other situations, we have a chapter called Jesus Was Prayerful, and it was written by Bethany Hammer. And she reflects at the beginning about when her mother passed away when she was in high school and how she cried out to God, being in that frustration and that anger and that
Yeah.
upsetness, and people saying, all the stuff that you hear, when you lose a parent at a young
Yeah.
age and everything, and then exploring, okay, but it's hard when I'm angry at God and I'm praying in that way. But how did Jesus pray? And just looking at those elements and seeing that, something I've never experienced. We have friends who lost parents in high school and everything and different stuff. I
Yes.
haven't, and all my grandparents lived well into their old age, into their
No.
90s. So I've been very fortunate. So I've not had that. So being able to see those words and read them and look at prayer through that perspective, and then how Jesus approached prayer, it challenges us to reevaluate ourselves, reevaluate our faith, and reevaluate the example of Jesus that we're trying to follow.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. I really like how you're willing to say you've grown. You've grown through this experience of this book, other people's interpretations of Jesus. And I kind of wish when we're in this moment right now where we're all panicked, and it doesn't matter whether we vote or what side we're on, if we're paying attention, we're panicked right now. We're worried. We have fear about our future and our kids' future. If we could all take a step back, recognize the anxiety, and do a little bit of reflecting. Hang on a second. Let's look at my social media feed. Is it divisive? And like you can work on your algorithm. So you can X out news stories that cause division. And just pay closer attention to it. Yesterday I was at Bloomington at an Indiana Rural Summit event, and a woman came up to me and said, "Look at what Trump is doing now." And she's completely panicked and she shows me the post, and it's a news source that's to the left. And I read it, and then I'm like, "Oh, that sounds terrifying." And then I read it again and I say, "Wait, it says considering. They haven't actually done anything yet." So this is again just spreading the fear, hate, and division. And I'm not saying I agree with what our president is doing. I'm saying recognize that this news company is profiting off of your fear. So they wrote a very, very scary headline to get you worked up. Can we turn those off? Can you X out of those? Can you stop following the divisive news and start picking things that are more unifying, more community building? We get to pick what comes into our brain. And I wish all of us could take a step back and eliminate some of those negative forces causing the division. I have had to do that. I've even had to tell friends, I need you to take a step back and stop attacking my social media, my feeds. It's hurting my mental health. And I've had to just say,
Mhm.
what I'm doing is hard, and a lot of people criticize me. And so we allow what comes into our brain. So if we just took more control over it, you know, and I think that would help us all. And I really think this book would help a lot of people. So I'm really glad that you wrote it, that your friend Susie's an awesome author and she has a movie based on her book. What's the movie called?
It's called The Unbreakable Boy.
Yeah, that's really amazing. I'm really
It's a
thankful
bit
for
of a
all of you.
tearjerker, I'll tell you, especially,
Oh,
it's family with an autistic son who has, other issues and stuff. So it does hit you hard in the struggles, but it's real life. And
well,
that's with all of it. It's all about, we need to look at the real of life because we all experience different things
yeah,
as opposed to, just these focused messages that we hear that are trying to stir up
they're trying to
all the
stir up
different stuff.
fear, hate, and division constantly. Every second of the day, they're trying to stir up fear, hate, and division. And I don't even know how aware they are of it because, like, some of my episodes get limited on Facebook if I use certain words. Even though
Mhm.
I'm promoting unity and community, the algorithms like scary word. Sometimes they'll block my Facebook account for a couple weeks because of a post Tim and I do about medical facts or something.
Yeah.
So the algorithm is weird. What social media allows and doesn't allow is very weird. And if we can take a step back and just see the propaganda and then instead look for the people uniting. You
Yeah.
are clearly uniting. You are open to learning, to growing, to changing, to being loving and forgiving. And you're saying it's even hard on you, a pastor. You have to work on it. I think as humans, we all have to
I
work on
always
that.
tell my congregation, I I say I don't. I try not to preach a sermon that I haven't wrestled with.
Right, right. That's a
First and
beautiful
foremost, I
thing.
mean, I could preach a lot of sermons and give great, but if I haven't personally wrestled with it, then it will be a disservice to try and convey it to my congregation.
And I want to go ahead and push. I want your thoughts on this as a pastor and a friend. Like, I would not have just let any person text me and say, I wrote a religious book. Can I come on your network? Because I have a lot of hesitation about religion. And
Mhm.
so I want to address that a little bit with you. But since I know you, I know you're a good human. I even talked to you last year at Lanesville Heritage Weekend for quite a while. We're Facebook friends. My husband knows you. My ex husband knows you. Everybody loves you. I trusted you. But I want to go ahead and acknowledge religion is used to harm people sometimes.
Mhm.
Sometimes the Christian religion, sometimes pastors, sometimes people make a lot of money off of saying Jesus wants you to put more in that plate and then they take a lot of it. I'm not making up things. There's been harm. I've had harm, Scott.
Mhm.
I've had harm at the church that I love, my dad's former church. I had a youth pastor hurt me. I had a youth pastor that clearly had a problem and I recognized it and I didn't trust her. And for years, she convinced everybody in youth group to go after me. It was like years of a plot to hurt me. And it caused me in 10th grade to have suicidal thoughts and depression. And I got myself out of it. And my mom helped me. And I had to quit Latin too because I couldn't handle the stress of it. It was going on at the beginning of the school year, my 10th grade year. And I got out of it. But I don't go to church. And it doesn't mean I don't respect Jesus because I've read the New
Mhm.
Testament 5 times, but I have a problem with somebody telling me something, telling me what to do.
Yeah.
And so I just want to acknowledge that, everybody. I'm not just putting any person on here to speak about Jesus. I'm putting a person that I love and trust on and having an authentic conversation. What do you say? Because I know you see it too. I
Mhm.
know that you see pastors using Jesus's name in ways that you wouldn't, and you think maybe it's propaganda, maybe it's to make them famous, make them money, to spread an agenda that seems to be hurting people. um I really worry about women in some of these religions and girls. What I would love your wisdom on this, because it's something I personally struggle with.
Yeah.
It's like I don't have a problem listening to you, but I have a problem listening to people I don't know. What is your advice on finding good people to preach to us?
Yeah, and the first thing I want to say is thank you for sharing all that, and that's important, because so often, and we have to admit that at times people have been hurt in the church, and it's not just a new current thing. We see it throughout history. We see it over and over again. People I know. In fact, that's the passion of a lot of our contributing authors. We had our primary professor, Scott McKnight, who's one of the leading voices in New Testament scholarship. He wrote the foreword for our book. His most recent big book is called A Church Called Tove, and it deals directly with church hurt and
Mhm.
the ways people are hurt. He lives in Chicago, and there was mega church up there that was going through, where their pastor, it was coming out that the pastor was hurting people, going through all this stuff, and his daughter and him wrote this book. And it was funny, our very first class with him was when all this was going out. So as he was teaching us this other stuff, he was working out this and he's like, guys, I need to teach you this stuff, but we have to focus on this because at times the church hurts people. And he wrote this book called A Church Called Tove. Tove is the Hebrew word for good, and it's the word that's used the most to describe God in the Old Testament. We always think about the God of wrath of the Old Testament, all
Mhm.
that stuff. The Hebrew people use the word good to describe God. And he goes into looking at the ways that church hurt and the ways that we can be a good church in the way that God is good. So it's important to look at that and acknowledge that, yes. And I'm sure there's times where I've said something that, have hurt someone or, different things. But there's also times where we go on and we see it build up and we hide it and we can just go over and over and over again. One of the ladies that wrote a chapter, she wrote two of our chapters. She wrote Jesus was subversive and Jesus was for the oppressed. Her name's Sarah Klingler, and she works for a organization called MK Safety Net. MK for missionary kids. She was a missionary kid. I think she was in the Philippines, different places all over. As an adult, she works to help children who were on the mission field, who were abused on the
Ugh.
mission field, and often abused by missionaries and Christ followers. Um, People get hurt by Christians often. And
Yeah.
so these chapters that we look at, Jesus was subversive. I mean, that's a powerful word, but we think about what it means. You can think about the negative meaning of it, of being just ornery and just fight, but what it really means is Jesus came into our system in our world and he flipped it upside down and looked at it differently. We have several of these chapters. Jesus was non-political and Jesus was not politically powerful. And they all these three chapters kind of come to the same thing of Jesus acted and functioned in a way outside of the way that we as humans operate. And we need to look at that because if we look at the people that Jesus reached, he reached tax collectors, reached Samaritans. When we look at the early church, the people that were coming and becoming Christians, we have some wealthy people, but most of them were slaves. They were, poor. They were the working class. They were, both Jews and Gentiles that were coming together. And building that and seeing the way that this drew people in, that speaks volumes. Why were these people attracted to Jesus? People who should have been turned away from the hurt of power and the power structures that are used to suppress them, to put them down. Even in Peter's chapter, Jesus was a friend to sinners and outcasts. He looks at prostitutes, what we call people who were slaves and had to perform sexual acts for their masters, and we see a lot of that, in church abuse and pastors who have abused women and stuff. And Jesus loved them for who they are, regardless of the situation they're in. And so in these moments, as we look at all the things that the world has around us, even within the church itself, at the times when the church has hurt people and suppressed people, the times when church has been a leading voice of segregation and racial tension and all this stuff, when we truly look at what Jesus said and what Jesus did, we see a different picture. We see one of love, of acceptance, one of hope, one of redemption, and one of acceptance.
I got a lot from what
valued.
you're saying. Yeah, that was really good answer. I like the first thing that you said. You said we should call it out and acknowledge it. People use God's name to do bad things. And it's so important. I cannot emphasize this enough. Do not trust someone just because they are a good Christian man or their pastor or youth pastor. That is your first warning. Be extra alert. Are they using that powerful position to do something bad? Because some of them do. And they mirror the good people. They mirror you. They act like you and other people that really love and are in it for the right reasons. So I meet people because I'm talking to people because I'm, out in the community, and I'll meet people that'll say, "Oh, this person, all I needed to hear was they're a good Christian man." It's like, no, that's not all you need to hear. If they're using that Christian man title, zoom in and look in and really examine. And, if they're looking at you as a pastor, they're seeing someone who's not perfect, who's admitting their mistakes, who's growing and loving everybody and saying, I think I can trust this person. But even you, if you said something ridiculous, and I talked to you about it and you didn't shift, so basically we always have to have our alarm system set up to not 100% trust. And that is something that I see people just blindly trusting because they're the pastor or the youth pastor, or they're doing this thing that's supposed to be Christian. And so that's good. And then the second thing I really like that you said is look who Jesus hung out with. Look who he talked to. He talked to those that were struggling the most. And we should be doing that. And you're saying Jesus wasn't political. Well, look at that. Jesus has been politicized. Everything has been politicized in our country, and it is really hurting us. So if you can think, well, is your pastor, is your person politicizing Jesus to get you to vote a certain way? That is a warning. Mm-hmm. And I see it in all faiths. I see good pastors in all faiths, and I see not great pastors in all faiths. So it's not like this group is bad, So I like what you said, and I think you said it really well. And my encouragement for everybody involved in some type of religion is to call out and stop the bad the second you see it. Don't try to cover it up because it's bad for the religion. Stop it. And a lot of us have been harmed because they didn't do that.
Which is what's bad for the religion, bad for our faith in Christ, is when we cover it up and we act like it's okay and everything. And it's interesting. I mean, and if I mentioned the God of the Old Testament, the evil, but he was described as good. But when we read through our Bibles, when we read through the Old Testament, we see a story of people who struggled much like this as well. If we think about the judges, there were only a handful of good judges. And it says this one wasn't good. This one wasn't good. This one wasn't good. Same with the kings of Israel. We had a few good kings, but most of them weren't good. And we see this over and over and over again. And there's a couple words that and they're kind of churchy words, but we need to use them more in the church. And they kind of mean the same thing. And we've had great debates amongst our authors as we go back and forth which one, it's a word I like is called cruciformity, or the variance of it is Christoformity. So there was this scholar, Michael Gorman, who wrote a book called Cruciformity, and it's looking at how Jesus's life was shaped by his act on the cross of willing to give himself up. And it looks at the Philippians 2 passage that says, it begins, and this is a big one I mentioned in one of my chapters, that in Philippians 2 verse 5, it says, in the ways you act with one another, have the same mindset as Christ, who, having the full nature of God, did not consider it something to be taken advantage of. So he humbled himself, became like a servant, and was willing to die, even death on a cross. And so when we think about that, and the Christoformity means being shaped like Christ, we look at that and we think, to know what it means to walk as a follower of Christ, we have to have the same mindset as Christ. We have to shape ourselves after Christ, who had all this power that he could have used. And we see these examples over and over again. If you're the Messiah, call down your angels and come off the cross.
Right.
We see this over and over where he did not take that to advantage. And I'll use one of the examples in my chapters because I said that we want to explore and discover ourselves as we were looking in this. So I wrote a chapter called Jesus Was a Servant, because you've talked about, all the stuff that the way people look at me. My family are servants. My grandfather was the town handyman. When he passed away at his funeral, we were joking that there probably wasn't a house in his small town that he didn't work in.
No.
And that's probably accurate. My father learned that from him. I learned that from him, what it means to serve others. So I wanted to investigate, because Jesus says the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve. So what did Jesus mean by a servant? And as I was looking at this chapter and thinking about this, and was getting ready for Easter and everything, I was looking at the Last Supper, the meal in the upper room, which begins with the foot washing. And there's a great parallel between this Philippians 2 chapter, and this is in John 13, where it says that Jesus knew everything that was going to happen that night. He had the power to stop it all. So he took off his robe, stripped down, became visually like a servant, got down and washed the disciples' feet. He washed the disciples' feet. Jesus washed Judas's feet. If that's not a message of servanthood, I don't know what is. Jesus was willing to get down knowing that Judas in a few hours would betray him, and still washed his disciples' feet. And then afterwards, he says, do you understand why I did this? Because I, your teacher and master, even after Peter said, you don't need to wash my feet. We need to be washing yours. Jesus said, I, your teacher and your master, got down and washed your feet. Go do the same.
That's really beautiful. And we haven't touched on this one part that's been in our whole conversation, and it's having empathy for other people, even when we don't understand where they come from. And this is where I get frustrated with my side, my Democrat side, being so unforgiving and wanting to yell at people that voted differently than them and say it's their fault and they're going to feel the pain and they deserve to feel the pain. And I'm like, where's the empathy? And you guys some of you might have gotten the idea from this book because of the division and because of January 6th. There's quite a few really good January 6th documentaries out there. There's a few on HBO. I've seen a lot of them, and I showed my 15-year-old some of them. And it really helps you to have empathy for the people that got arrested. I know this sounds wild. The people that got arrested for trying to take down the Capitol, which is not what I believe. We should not have done that. When it goes in and it zooms in and it meets the people and it's like, well, why did you do this? Well, like one of them was like, well, my sister wanted me to go. I didn't know what was going on. I was just trying to be supportive of my sister. And some of them were like, well, I believed this and this thing. I believed the election was stolen. I was told all of these facts and they look completely true and factual to me. So I really believed it. I don't believe it now, but I believed it then. It's like, where's the empathy?
Mhm.
People were getting tricked and misled, being fed fake propaganda, and they thought their liberty and freedom was gone. They thought they lost it. That's scary. I'm just saying we need to stop and reflect on the people that seem so different from us because we can all be tricked. It
Yeah.
can happen to every one of us. And a lot of my side is being tricked right now because
Yeah.
they're being constantly told other people are evil because of how they voted. And it's like your message, the Jesus was message is have empathy, love them. It doesn't mean let them hurt you, but talk to them, have dialogue, understand where they're coming from, and you empathetically talking to them and trying to understand, and then hopefully they will want to understand you, and that's where we get some common ground. But if we cut ourselves off, if we keep ourselves in our bubbles, how are we going to stop the division?
Yeah, and
Like,
we have the empathy is very important, and it is something, and we have a lot of chapters that really hit on that. We have, our first chapter is Jesus was a listener, which if when you read it, you'll enjoy it because it starts off with a story looking at a jazz musician who takes, a solo and being able to improv and, being musicians, we understand. But Jesus was a listener. Some of our other chapters, Jesus was kind. Jesus was humble. Jesus was merciful. Jesus was gentle. Jesus was emotional. Jesus was forgiving. And that's one that I want to speak, just hearing you talk about this, because that was written by Terry Fullerton. And Terry has been hurt by people. And so forgiveness is a journey. And it's something that we have to constantly be working with. And so she chose to investigate, how was Jesus forgiving? And in this, as she's exploring the ways that Jesus offered forgiveness and sought forgiveness, she starts talking about, if you think about the Michigan State scandal in the gymnastics where the Larry Nassar was abusing the women.
mm-hmm.
And when the gymnast got up there and, in court and gave this beautiful speech about, all that's going on. But in there, she talked about how she forgives him. Even for all that, she forgives him. It doesn't eliminate the accountability that we have as people, but she can offer forgiveness because God can forgive. We heard that even, yesterday in the memorial service yesterday. His wife was talking about how she forgives the shooter, and in this chapter, Terry remembers Dylan Roof, who was the man who went into the Bible study in the black church.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah,
It shot the people, and even some of the people who were there at that time who lost
I remember
family
that.
members got up and said in court, "We forgive you." Because that's what Jesus did. A great verse that we say all the time that we forget.
It doesn't mean you allow people to hurt you.
Not at all.
But I think that those people are amazing. And I'm not saying I don't think I would be there. So if like something happened to a child or something, I don't think I could immediately go and say that. Maybe over time.
Yeah.
But forgiveness is not just for the other people. It's not really for the other person at all. It's for yourself.
Right.
If you're going to be a loving, kind person, it's something you have to go through.
Yeah.
And it's so much easier for me to tell somebody else to forgive, like, "Oh, I made a mistake, I'm sorry," than it is for me to forgive sometimes. So I do have to like self-reflect and be like, "Oh, I'm holding on to some anger because this person hurt my feelings. I gotta let it go."
A
It's
beautiful passage that relates to that is in Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. He says, if you're at the altar to make your offering, and you remember that someone else, that your brother has something against you, put down your offering, go to them, and be reconciled to them. That's powerful. And if we
Yeah.
think about it, we say over and over, Jesus came for the sinners. While we were still sinners,
And
Christ
we all
died
are. We all mess up. We like to pretend that we don't, but we all mess up. We're all sinners. And I don't use that word personally. I just use like, oh, I made a mistake and I'm sorry because I'm not religious. But it's the same. It's the same thing. And it's just something I've learned in therapy, Scott. When someone hurts me and I'm going to keep talking to them, they're going to keep being in my life. I need to tell them that they hurt me. I can do it in
Mhm.
a not emotional way. I can try to be very kind. I can try to say, this hurt my feelings because instead of saying, you did this to me, you terrible person, I can say it in a healthy way. But also, I'm supposed to say it. This is my therapist telling me, you need to let the person know they hurt you. And then it's on them.
Mhm.
You told them, and sometimes I say what I'd like, if we're going to be friends, I'm going to need this and it's your choice. And then it's on them and I'm done. I've let it go. I feel 50 pounds lighter. And then it's up to them whether they want to say, you know what? I see your point now. I'm sorry. I felt this way, or if we can have a dialogue. And I think we're missing that in our culture today.
Mhm.
I think we just I'm never going to talk to you again. I'm done. And because it's painful. And let me tell you, it's hard for me to go to somebody I love and be like, listen, I know I've let this behavior go on for 20 years, but now I'm in therapy and now I'm realizing it and I want to stop this. It's like it's hard, but it's also made me be more authentic and more empathetic. So yeah,
Yeah.
I think that you preach it with Jesus and I do it with therapy. you know but
Which is more alike than we think.
yeah, it's very similar, especially the way you're preaching. Like, I
Mhm.
think the people sitting in the pulpit listening to you preach are very lucky and fortunate. I don't think that for every church. So it's a complicated thing because it's hard for me to speak about religion, honestly, because I have very complicated feelings.
Mhm.
I've learned a lot from priests, pastors, all kinds of different people that are walking in the religious faith, and I've been hurt a lot. And I also have problems with certain institutions that are very strict on certain things that I don't agree with. And so what the way I handle it is I just take bits and pieces. I'm listening to you preach about this beautiful book that I think is a wonderful book that I hope many people read. And I can take what you're saying, the wisdom of it, and I can put it in my heart and I can learn from it. And then but I don't trust one faith.
Mhm.
I think I'm going to pick the good things of all kinds of religions. And you're respectful of that. Like, you're not, oh no, I better stop talking to Sarah. She doesn't go to
I'm in
church
the
on
interview.
Sundays. Yeah. And so I think that just us having this conversation is sort of beautiful. And
Mhm.
again, I would not have done it if I didn't absolutely adore you, Scott, because I have religious trauma. So I just think it's a healing for me. Like, you're
Mhm.
helping me with my religious trauma, and I
Yeah.
appreciate that. I just think a lot of us have religious trauma,
Yeah.
especially women my age or older. We have a lot because I was taught things that are very sexist
Mhm.
in the youth group. It was really pushed down on me because of the 90s. That was the culture in the 90s. Look at what we did to like Britney Spears and stuff.
Yeah.
and and so I think it's healing if you're listening to this and you also have been hurt by people in some sort of faith with a label, to talk with the good ones, the
Mhm.
ones like you, and to seek some comfort there,
Yeah.
you know?
And one of Susie's chapters that she wrote, Susie's finishing off her doctorate right now in New Testament and women's studies. And she wrote a chapter, Jesus was for women,
Yeah.
which is quite important. And Sarah, I know we're getting low on time, and I really wanted to read our dedication for this
Oh, I
book
would love for you to do
because
that.
it really speaks to what this book's about. It says
Okay.
this book is for those who love Jesus and want to be reminded of the Jesus of the Gospels. Those who are willing to step outside of assumptions and comfort zones to rediscover the Jesus of the Gospels, and those who are willing to push their own boundaries and investigate what is beautiful about Jesus. That's the heart that we had when we approached this, because it speaks to everybody if we open up and just listen.
Open up and listen. That's beautiful. Thank you so much for doing this with me. I've been looking forward to it. After you messaged me about it, I've been looking forward to it. Please get his book if this sounds good to you. Maybe get it for a friend if you think they would like it. You can get it on Amazon right now, but there was only 17 left like an hour ago or 2 hours
And
ago.
I'll say, we haven't said it yet. We, on our website, I believe it's on the website right now, but it'll be available. It's coming out. We have a small group discussion guide
Oh,
that
nice.
several of our contributors put together that goes through, and it's got a section for each of the chapters. And so you can do it all or pick and choose which ones to talk about. But it's
And so how do you get that? It's on their website?
It's on our website, and we're working on getting it on Kindle if you want it. It will also be available on our publisher. Kriegel is our publisher. It will be available on their website right now. I don't know if it's available there yet.
But your website is jesuswasbook.com.
Yes.
jesuswasbook.com. So if you want that discussion guide, that sounds really beautiful. And then you can order it in multiple places. It comes out tomorrow, which is September 23rd. So that is really exciting. Also, if you listen to this conversation and you like it, I encourage you to go to our YouTube channel and go to our playlists and find the shows called A Doctor and a Priest Walk Into a Podcast, because my co-founder and good friend, Dr. Tim Peck, has an uncle that's a Catholic priest, and they do a show together where they discuss hard religious topics as having a discussion. And so I'm going to see if you could get into that show. I think that would be really cool to have. Let's add a pastor to that. A pastor, a priest, and a doctor walk into a podcast. Let's do it.
Sounds like a bad joke.
But I am really proud of you. I'm really thankful for you. I'm thankful to everybody that wrote a chapter in this book. We need it. America needs it. The world needs it. We are very divided, and we aren't. That's the thing. We are divided, but in reality, we aren't divided. We are all human, and most of us are good, and we're trying, and we mess up, and we need to have empathy and love and forgiveness for one another. So come into a warm, welcoming place, you all. Turn off the divisive news. Order this book. Go to more unity stuff. I follow Builders Movement. They're a really good one that's about unity right now. Follow the people that are uniting, like you. Follow those people. And if people are saying we need to hate this other side, that's your clue. If we should fear the other side, to turn them off, because our country can't handle that anymore. We've got to lessen it as much as possible. So yeah. Thank you, everybody. We have a website, we have a Substack. It's Project Next Indiana. If you want to get emails of the show, you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and then we have a YouTube at Project Next, if you will subscribe to that. And good luck, Scott.
Thanks for having me on here. It's been a pleasure to talk with you about all this, and I hope your listeners have been inspired to have these conversations.
I agree. I think it's really beautiful for me to be able to share with you my religious stuff, and you to be able to give me your wisdom, and for us to come to a place of understanding. We don't have to agree on everything, but we agree on so much. We agree on so much. And the community, we agree on our love for people. And don't give up on humanity. I see so many people just like, well, since the world's ending, it's like, no, it's not. Think about in our past, think about dark times. We have persevered, and we're going to persevere. Things are going to get better. We just need everybody working together, even with our problems and our mistakes. All right, everybody, check out jesuswasbook.com. You can look at, can they follow you on Facebook? Do you allow followers?
Yeah.
That last name, you guys.
It's a long last name. We're there. We also have a Substack ourselves for Jesus Was Book. I have one for myself, Scott Johanningsmeier. You can find me there. Not always writing. I write about music. I write about, you can tell I'm a nerd geek.
You
I write about.
were the band teacher for my nephew Carter, and you
No,
were his
for
favorite.
Sky. It
Oh,
was yeah, Carter
Sky.
was there. Sky, yeah,
Yeah,
for
yeah,
your
yeah.
news, yeah.
And so,
So
and that was really wonderful. You were great. You were great.
yeah,
Um, yeah, I mean, just I don't know. What a joy to get to be with you. And Floyd Central, huh? Class of
yep.
1999. Big props. Did you go to the Floyd Central band competition on Saturday?
I did not. My kid
I
wasn't
saw
feeling too well,
I
so
saw a bunch of our farmer friends, and my kid played, and they won their division, and they won best percussion. It was really
well, they
beautiful.
were going up against my kid's school, so I don't know if I can cheer.
What's your kid's school?
Charlestown.
Oh, their show
So
was so cute. The Beetlejuice show.
yeah, they did the Beetlejuice. So
Guys, the Beetlejuice becomes their field commander. Beetlejuice walks around and picks on everybody while they're playing. Your guys' show is adorable. And so you have Treva Hodges as mayor.
yes,
Yeah, she's my favorite mayor. I love Treva. That's cool. So anyway, yeah, just a beautiful thing. Community. I loved the Floyd Central Invitational and seeing parents that I went to school with, their kids are now in marching band. I mean, adorable.
yeah.
Community, guys. Don't give up on us. All right. Love you all. Thank you, Scott. Have a great day. Please share the show with somebody you think would appreciate it and get this beautiful book, Jesus Was. Bye, everybody.
See ya.